Hi, this is Celeste, and today we are going to be talking about the federalization of the different sectors in the United States. I know that many of you have seen all the clips about the violence that's going on, and that the National Guard was called up, and different uniformed officers, both marked and unmarked, came into different cities and were doing operations. They refused to identify, in many cases, who they were, what affiliation they were. And then all of a sudden now they're kind of going out. And what I'm going to do is, a couple weeks ago, President Trump was talking about the food supply. And I wanted to kind of give you the backstory of this whole federalization program. So this is something that I was intimately involved in at my time in the agencies, and it was one of the reasons that I left the agencies. And so this whole program miraculously started appearing the day after September 11th, 2001. There was this huge volunteer program. They wanted every man, woman, child, every sector of the United States. They wanted to seize on the patriotism to get people interested in creating a partnership between themselves and their occupation and the federal government. And there were a lot of things that the average American did not know about that program at the time. And we're going to walk through some of the backstory that of the coverage that I did starting in 2010 about, and then we're going to end with going over President Trump's recent YouTube briefing about the food supply. So this is basically an article that I believe that I did in 2010. Choose this day whom you will serve. And if you notice, there is the Civilian Response Corps from the United States of America. And I'm sure that maybe you didn't even know that we had a Civilian Response Corps. And this is part of the million-man army that is bigger and better than the army. And we need to understand that no man can serve two masters. That is what the Bible says. And so we're going to find out just exactly what's behind this federalization program. So here you see down that this is powered by All for Good. Sounds good, right? Okay, let's find out if it's good. All for Good is a point of lights. Are you familiar with point of lights? It's Chinese. It is accelerating people-powered change. It is a very globalist, socialistic platform. It's kind of like an incubator for change for the United Nations and achieving their goals. And it has been active, I believe, since at least 2001. And it has some companies that I'm sure you're familiar with, like AARP, United Way, Points of Light, Global Network, and so forth. And their mission is to solve the challenges that are far-reaching and complex. And of course, here they say the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So they are facilitator. Of course, they did not say this way back in the day. And what are their columns or their pillars? No poverty, zero hunger, health and well-being for all, quality education, gender equality, and water and sanitation. So it's not exactly this federalization as the currents of the United Nations. Now, I'm just going to scroll through this. So this whole program began under President Bush. And then when the reins were turned over to Obama, under the USA Freedom Corps, there was a president's call, the Serve America Act, ushering in a new era of service. And that was for every man, woman, and child, and every occupation in the United States. Then, this is really kind of interesting. The president was calling on United We Serve, and we're kind of hearing that same rhetoric today with the coronavirus. And basically, this was Obama calling on all Americans to participate in our nation's recovery and renewal by serving our communities. This sounds really familiar with just a few tweaks with the latest pathogen. There are many ways to get involved. America's new foundation will be built one community at a time, and it starts with you, and of course it will end with one community. But the very interesting thing is United We Serve. And who do they serve? You serve government. So let's check that one out and see what we find. Okay, so this was established under Barack Obama, and I don't know if you knew, but there is an Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation, and once again, it is very sustainable, it is very global, it contains all these different people. There's the entertainment industry, the football players, the basketball players. They want to get engaged volunteers on the path to sustained service. That's basically slavery. They have easy to use online tools. Ask Americans not just to serve, but to lead, and create new partnerships that bring communities together. But what they really want is you to partnership with the federal government. So this serve.gov, it used to just be serve.gov, but now it takes you to the National and Community Service Program. And if you notice in the upper left-hand corner, there is the AmeriCorps and the Senior Corps, but it is much more than that. And you can see that this has been updated for the latest coronavirus. And what they want you to do is donate to nonprofits. They want you to fund their operation of slavery, donate to food banks and pantries. They only want you to buy a week of food, but they want you to donate that food to those in need. They want you to help deliver meals and take groceries to vulnerable seniors, which I don't know anybody that accepts that. They want you to help a school, but not like helping children to read, write, or do mathematics. They want you to distribute food and other items to children. They want you to give your blood through the Red Cross. They want you to become a medical volunteer, which, like I said, this is very comprehensive. It is every sector of the United States. If you have medical supplies or equipment, they want you to donate them to FEMA. Of course, they say stay in touch. They want you to serve your community, but you have to be vetted, and that vetting includes a background check. And volunteer at home through the All for Good. And we'll get to that one, I believe, in a minute. I better just press that right now. And what is the All for Good? Oh, this is the Point of Lights. And this is a landing page where you can get started volunteering or voluntary slavery within your own talent or gift. So we'll get out of that. But because I found this really interesting. So this is off topic a bit, but I just wanted you to see that FEMA has a coronavirus rumor control. So let's just press this and see what happens. So of course we're going to go off the site, and here's our FEMA coronavirus rumor control, and they're telling you to do 3 easy things: to find a trusted source of information, and of course that would not be alternative media. Share information from trusted sources, so you're not supposed to share any information from alternative media, and discourage others from sharing information from unverified sources. And that would be a person that they would say, like me. And so this was really kind of interesting. So they go down and they say, there's a rumor, I got a call, a text, or email saying I could get financial help. Is it legitimate? Well, it's actually true. So if you press this, there are scammers pretending to be the government, but there's also the government is sending out help. So did FEMA seize supplies from the Department of Veteran Affairs? And is FEMA seizing medical supplies? Is FEMA suspending rent in certain states? Do I need to register with FEMA in order to be considered for COVID-19 help from the U.S. Small Business Administration? Did FEMA block shipments of ventilators of my state? Is 5G cell phone technology linked to the cause of the coronavirus? Do I need a photo ID to be tested for the Corona-19 at the community-based testing center? Is FEMA deploying the military? Now, these are very tricky because it says FEMA has executed a fully reimbursable mission assignment, which they have to do. And so it has launched the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But FEMA technically did not deploy the military. They just did, they assigned it the official number that needs to be done for an activation. And is the DHS deploying the National Guard? So at the federal level, it was recommended, and then each state went ahead and activated their National Guards. But if they didn't, remember the conference or the briefing that President Trump said, if you don't take care of your problem, we will. So they basically were coerced. They didn't have any opportunity to say no. Are there any vaccines to prevent or medicines to treat COVID? I'm on Medicare and someone offered me a COVID-19 test. Should I accept? Are older people and those with existing conditions the only ones at risk for corona? Is the government sending everyone money? Is there a national lockdown or quarantine? So that was actually done at the state level. And should I stock up on food and supplies? And here it is, right in black and white. Please only buy what your family needs for 1 week. And if you would have done that, you would have run out of food. So they really want you dependent upon the food supply. This was updated on March 26, 2020. And why you would have to worry about hantavirus during coronavirus, I don't know. So there you go on that. So we're going to go back to the document that I did. So now you know a little bit about the Serb government, but it gets even more interesting. So here's the National Community Service that we saw. That is actually, as you see, that is a corporation. It is a lot like the United States corporation, which is different than the lowercase. So as you see that there is a New Deal, or there was a New Deal enterprise volunteer, and you could either become part or not. You must be informed and trained and material and psychologically prepared. They knew at the time, and this is back in 2010, that there would be a crisis. And what did they expect? They said, you're going to expect disruption. And what are we seeing? Absorb or tolerate the disturbance. And what have we had to do? We've had to endure the blows. Know our role when everything hits the fan. So we were to be expected to be submissive slaves and adapt to our changing conditions. And then it's really interesting. Sometime we'll have to do a show on what is a citizen, because it's really interesting. Are we a citizen of heaven, or are we a citizen of this earth? There is a United States Department of State and Office of Coordinator for Reconstruction. And it is to stabilize war-torn societies, rebuild nations, including our own war-ridden country. So they were already aware and were training civilian and military for this season that we are seeing right now. And they were going to be using the Civilian Response Corps, which was an interagency body which promotes the whole of government planning and implementation, basically a one-stop enforcement to judicial execution model. And of course, once again, they use the socialist points of light. They also use the hands-on network, which is closely affiliated with the Point of Light Institute. Mission Fish is a social enterprise, and that has to deal with online sales and charity. And then there's civic incubators, and I'm not going into all of these, but the interesting thing about it is the civic incubator is closely affiliated with the Interfaith Service Initiative, and it especially goes after young people. And here we see marketing our youth through indoctrination. There is a kids program, kids involved in doing service. Like I said, it's every man, woman, and child. And Homeland Security has a kids branch. The Secret Service has a kids branch. The FBI has a kids branch. And they all are doing brainwashing our children. This is about the background check. And if you are skeptical of whether they really do run background checks, here is civilian and unaffiliated volunteers get a criminal background check. Now, this is particularly what I want you to see before we switch over to the food, that this AmeriCorps, the National Community Service, has a new pledge and a new standard. And the pledge is, I will get things done for America to make our people safer. That's one of the agenda items of the United Nations, smarter agenda item and healthier. So basically you're talking, this first paragraph is talking Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. I will bring Americans together to strengthen our communities. Once again, that the United Nations wants a decentralized, get back to local subsistence where a few elite run the world and the few remaining people will be peasants if they're alive at all. But it will be all, they're breaking up globalism through the new pathogen. And faced with apathy, I will take action. And so they define apathy as anybody that does not agree with their particular worldview. With conflict, I will seek common ground, which, no, not really. When faced with adversity, I will persevere. I will carry this commitment with me this year and beyond. I am an AmeriCorps member and I will get things done. This is like totally different than our Pledge of Allegiance. Now, each program is represented by a white star in a blue field, which appears together with red and white stripes. The three stripes represent citizenship, service, and responsibility. This is highly occultic. There are rules like you're never to run the logo sideways. It has to be proportional. You can't squeeze it, blah, blah, blah. And so what are the elements of this occultic AmeriCorps that people are pledging? And this can be police, it can be the military, whatever. So it is a corporation logo and two elements. The name of the corporation, and I want to draw your attention that it is in capital letters. The three stars representing the three programs, and the three stripes representing citizenship, service, and responsibility, and the three wise men, three stars in the sky, and the pyramid triangle. The program logo consists of several elements: a black serrated seal, two white outlines of circles, which is Masonic and occultic, a white sunburst, a bright white star of the morning is Lucifer, a capital letter representing each program, the full name of the program, and the stylized American flag with one star to represent a one global order, and three stars representing the citizenship, the service, and the responsibility. So they actually take an oath to this particular seal and this corporation. And one thing that's interesting is black is often represents determination, ethnic heritage, and defeating one's enemies. Red often represents courage. It can represent revolution, hardiness, blood, or valor. Dual purpose meanings in these. White can represent peace, purity, mountain snow, and innocent, but a white flag can mean surrender. So here I had this forensically put together website, and when it had been hacked so many times, and it was a constant battle. It was from entities within and without, outside of our country. And I had it for a long time until David was killed. And so these particular articles were from 2010. So I just want to bring it to your attention. This is from the Wayback Machine. It's all that I have access to anymore. So you can see that I did do the articles, but back in 2010, farms and food were being federalized. And basically they were bringing in the NIMS, which is a military organizational structure, to farms. And I can show you an example of that from March 29th. That was released that Tuesday morning. So here was the federal command. There was a regional command, a state command, the branches, the divisions, the sector, the area, and the farm. So I wish I had the whole document, but I don't. So now we're going to fast forward to a few weeks ago when President Trump held a briefing about the food supply and farmers and reopening America. And so I'm just going to go through a little bit of the transcript and try and explain or translate what he was saying. So basically he was saying to safely reopen America, and that it was happening very much faster with better numbers than anybody would have thought. He wanted to begin by expressing his profound gratitude to everyone there and the farmers and producers. Now you need to understand the word producers came into being about 2005 during this leveling of the playing field, and no longer were farmers and ranchers referred to as farmers and ranchers. They were referred to as producers. So their only value was based upon what they produced And if they did not produce, they were expendable. And you really need to understand that that policy had already been established. And so then he continues, they were across the country and kept our nation fed and nourished as we battled the invisible enemy. It's tough, but we're going to win, and we're going to win very big. And the American farmer is the backbone of our country. And you see, he doesn't refer to the farmers as the backbone until, he's kind of almost doing it like a campaigny type speech, lots of back patting. He goes into saying that he is providing vital assistance for farmers and the needy. Basically, he is providing welfare for the farmers and the needy. And the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, as well as the Pork Association and the National Poultry Improvement Plan, and the Dairy Federation, these are all global players. They do not care about you. They do not care about the food supply. They do not care about health. The only thing that they care about is money. They are extremely greedy, and they are very unethical. And you need to know that about them. They set the prices, what's GMO, what's not GMO. There is an unholy alliance between these organizations and the government. So then now he reverts back to the agricultural producers, and he says that it was really nice to meet them, and he featured, I don't know how many, but a handful of producers. And from day one, he's patting himself on the back. He has been determined to protect our nation's incredible farmers, and that he has enacted historic tax cuts which help family farms stay in the family. And what they did is they passed tax cuts and eradicated the death tax and the inheritance tax on small farms and ranches, even big businesses. So instead of losing your farm, you keep your farm. So this sounds really, really good. But I went to here in person, the Department of Interior, I would say probably about 2010. He was speaking in Ovando, Montana, and there were probably several hundred ranchers in attendance. And what he said is, back in the 1960s, they would have, the government, the federal government would have offered farmers and ranchers money, incentive money, to go along with the federal agenda, which had already started to become very environmentally minded, which basically means Agenda 21. But then he stopped and he said, but today we're not doing that. We're going to tell you what our agenda is. And if you want to pass down your farm and your ranch to your children, you have to follow the agenda to the T, point blank. And all of the white-hatted ranchers, their hats were going up and down in agreement. So they had already signed on to Agenda 21. So, I mean, this sounds really good about the death tax and the inheritance tax, and the farmers and ranchers are going to keep their farms and ranches. But the only people that are going to be keeping those are very large farms and ranches, and those that tote the Agenda 21 line. And that's going to mean in the future not growing crops, euthanizing your beef, producing what they tell you, like insects. We might be going into locust breeding or something like that for these Impossible Burgers. So It's not, it sounds really good, but it's a lie, a bold-faced lie. So he also says that at 2 minutes and 42 seconds, he says he's eliminating crushing Washington regulations and replacing badly negotiated and broken trade deals. And of course, he, points the finger at China and says he wants a fair and level playing field. So that is his code for global socialism, that he wants the farmers. Once again, he's reinforcing that they must go along with the global agenda, Agenda 21. And as far as the crushing regulations, that is such a joke. There are so many regulations. None of the regulations has been repealed. They just layer upon layer upon layer. And there's actually new and more dangerous regulations now, because farming and ranching is being required to transition to technological agriculture. And so there's a lot of regulations around that. And he's talking about $28 million of direct assistance to the farmers as a relief for the unprecedented coronavirus, in which they had a really rough time. And he's talking about 40% of beef grown and raised in the United States is distributed to restaurants and other commercial food establishments. But as you know, the virus has forced many of our nation's restaurants to close. Now, what I'm wondering is, I understand you cannot keep lettuce, you can't freeze it. But why was the food not put in freezers? Why do we have a shortage now? Yes, I understand the supply chain. Yes, I know the slaughterhouses and packing houses were closed, but there were things in the pipeline. And those meats and perishable items, many of them could have been put in freezers. But now we're stuck with rationing, and this is never going away. That's the problem. So then he's launching a sweeping new initiative due to the coronavirus, a food assistance program that is going to cost $19 billion. And basically, he's going to give it to agricultural producers. Now, you see, it's the producers. It's those who tote the Agenda 21 line to maintain the health of our critical food supply chains. And then he's also going to give some food assistance to the welfare families, the people that don't work, not hardworking Americans, but the people that just basically suck the system. And I realize some of us are not blessed. We don't have the food. But my take is everybody should have a garden, and then you should take a little bit if there's some charity out there, but do your part. Don't just sit in your house and say, I just need full charity. I need welfare because, I have Netflix to watch. So there's a program called, the CARES Act and the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act, that was going to compensate farmers related to the global pandemic. And once again, they just pointing the finger at China. We're as bad at biological warfare as China is, so we have no business pointing the finger. What is that saying? Those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. And he's talking about terminating trade deals, and then especially importing of cattle. Here we're slaughtering our cattle, but we're bringing in cattle. Then he says, so we're slaughtering cattle, we're not going to bring in cattle. So how we're going to get meat, there's not going to be a lot of options out there. The wild animals have been tainted with the chronic wasting disease. So there's also a food box program by the Department of Agriculture that is going to distribute local food. See, this is the federalization of the food supply. And pretty soon, if you're in agriculture at the small level or the large level, the government is the middleman and they take their take. And he who writes the check, you are beholden to him. So this is a dangerous precedent. And he talks a lot about the food banks and the charities to serve the needy families. This is also a dangerous precedent. Instead, he should be setting up community gardens, kind of like the allotments in the United Kingdom, instead of giving welfare money and food free, and where people don't have to work for it. Because we do have a grand solar minimum coming up, and people are going to need to grow their own food. The government is not going to be doing it for you. He also calls his money a bridge. And yeah, it's a bridge between the old system of agriculture and the new system of technological agriculture. And it's also a bridge between the global warmth that we have enjoyed, where crops were plentiful, and the grand solar minimum that is going to be very frigid, and the growing areas are going to shift, and traditional places where crops have grown in America won't be possible to grow food. Then he was talking about the Second Amendment and protecting potatoes, and I didn't really quite, he went on and on and on about the potatoes. And once again, he was using flattery. Instinctively, American agriculture farmers and ranchers have been the bedrock of our American economy since the founding of our nation, and they still are. And the government wants to be a real lifeline. And then he goes into talking about the specialty crop producers, both dairy and meat. And you wonder what specialty they're talking about. These are normal crops, so they're not really specialty crops. So what are these, like new technological crops and products, or what is he talking about? Because that's what the United Nations is talking about. And then he emphasizes about the high quality food. But what is high quality food? It's old fashioned hard work farming. So anyway, then it gets a bit repetitive, and there is some of the ranchers and farmers spoke. But I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that the food supply, it's been a long time happening, very slow and incremental, but it is run in a military type fashion, despite all the pomp and circumstance and flattery. We have been our food supply was taken over by the United Nations. And as you know from last August, when I informed you that the United Nations goal is to sell food by the 1/1000th of a calorie, and DARPA wants to sell food by the molecule. So that is coming. It is in process. I know most of you kind of found it difficult to believe last August, but prepare, brace yourself, especially with protein. If you can make a weekly jaunt to the store and get whatever protein you can, that is going to be the biggest thing that will be problematic in the days to come. I mean, you can grow vegetables, but your meat supply, animals take a lot of care, and there's actually quite a long learning curve to taking care of them, and you have to have the right setup. So anyway, that's it for today on the federalization of the food supply. And as usual, if you have any questions, just ask.